Please show some love. Good evening, good evening. Please show some love. It's good to be in your space tonight. I bring you greetings from Fort Worth, Texas. Tonight, we are talking about a subject that I'm very excited about. In the audience, I'd like to welcome my brother, Musoma, also from Fort Worth, Texas, who's listening in, and all the other guests from Monterrey, from the Life Department. And of course, I'm very excited to have our guest that is here from Canada. Before I proceed, I'd like to read you just the first verse of the song you just heard. Oh, 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 oh. It says, oh, 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 oh. It says, try everything. It says, I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I lost this fight to myself. I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get up now to see what's next. I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I lost it to myself. I'll just start again. Buenas noches, welcome to my home. I hope that you'll enjoy our time together tonight as we discuss rehumanizing, rewomanizing, and decolonializing leadership. Rewomanizing, rehumanizing, decolonializing. Our special guest, Dr. Chiuzi, coming in from Canada, will give us an introduction. And you know what, folks? I don't want to limit him to the title of the night. He will speak from his expertise, from his heart, regarding a topic of psychological safety that I believe is important to every one of us at EGS. Dr. Chiuzi, you are in good company. You are a fellow man from the Southern Hemisphere. You're from Brazil, and we're excited to have you here, sir. But before I do that, I want to respect you by reading your bio, because you are a man of great accomplishment. So Dr. Rafael Chiuzi is an experienced organizational psychologist with a strong demonstrated capacity to leverage human capital for organization and people alike. In his 15 plus years of innovative implementation of business experience, he has been able to overcome widespread organizational challenges and successfully implement lasting and meaningful change. His area of specialty, including his doctoral thesis, is the study and application of psychological contracts to leaders and teams. His psychological contract, too, has been applied to succession planning, exploration and encapsulation of leadership identity, and the subsequent management of all related matters. As a result, Rafael has produced positive organizational enhancements for large Fortune 500 companies across the globe. Dr. Chiuzi is a published author and a highly sought after keynote speaker for several Canadian and international corporations. We're adding Mexico to his list now. And so in his bio next time, it will say Mexico. He is a 2 times TEDx speaker and a member of the University of Toronto. I am going to butcher this, sir. You're going to have to teach me how to say this. Mississauga. Mississauga Campus Council, and is the Vice Chair of the Campus Affairs Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you our very esteemed guest tonight. You are in very capable hands as you listen to our guest, Dr. Chiuzi. It's all to you, sir.
Hello, good night. Thanks for having me. And thanks for making me look far more important than I am. It's always a good introduction. Before we start, I just wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home of many, many Indigenous people across Turtle Island, and I am just grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. And I just wanted to start with that, acknowledging this indigenous legacy that we have over here. And all the names that you hear, Toronto, Mississauga, they're all indigenous names. And that's why I would like to start by acknowledging this. Desearía que mi español fuera mejor ahora y pudiera dar esta charla en su lengua materna, pero desafortunadamente no lo es. Y español se usa principalmente para socializar con mis amigos sudamericanos en Canadá. Espero que puedan perdonarme por eso. So I'll stick to my English. And I was very happy to have received this invitation to have a chat with you about this topic that is so near and dear to my heart. I'll keep my introduction here brief so that Dr. Musoma and I can have a little chat afterwards and hopefully listen to some of your own comments and suggestions and questions that you might have. So I am an organizational psychologist. I started my undergrad in psychology, and then my master's, and my doctorate dissertation, all in psychology. So I have a love-hate relationship with people. The more I study, I've been studying people for over 20 years now, and the more I study, the more questions I have. But that's the beauty of it. My wife is also a psychologist, but she's a clinical psychologist, and we have two poor kids being raised by two psychologists. We don't know what's going to happen to them. We hope for the best. So, in the spirit of humanizing and decolonializing leadership, I want to warn you that this talk has flaws and shortcomings, and it is imperfect by design, just like leadership in the real world. So by all means, you should not take every word here as truth. Instead, I urge you to choose those words that resonate with you and adapt as you see fit, and throw away all the rest. But this is also the beauty of leadership, the way I see it. That means it happens everywhere, and it's performed by many, daily, hourly, not only in big stages or in boardrooms. We have this very skewed vision of leadership. We picture Steve Jobs and his turtleneck on a big stage, making a big announcement, and then we see that, and like, okay, that's leadership. But it's not. Leadership happens on a Monday morning when you are in a bad mood, or it happens on a Friday night when you're trying to celebrate with your friends. It happens everywhere, and I didn't want to give that image. I remember one time in a leadership development program, it was one big executive room. And one of the executives, he posed me a question that was very interesting. He said, look, what is the real value of leadership? Why do we talk so much and we think so much about leadership? And I was surprised coming from him, because I would expect big executives, they would be the ones, just fluffing their own ego and say, no, leaders it's everything that matters and everything. But it got me thinking. And I wrote down a few ideas after that conversation with him. And I like Warren Bennis. He has a very interesting quote in his book. He says, look, leadership is like beauty. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. And it's a very tricky, it's a very slippery concept to talk about leadership. And so the way I see it, and bear in mind, this is my bias as a psychologist, the leadership value to me lies in the subjective integration of people and systems and how you can create and sustain a collective identity. I mean, that's a huge challenge. And this is because, people should not be managed. People should not be controlled. And that's a misconception that I see. A lot of people, when we have this discussion about leadership, but how we manage people, I don't think you can manage people really. Work is managed, processes are controlled, but people, humans are led. We respond very well to that. I want you to remember who was your first very inspirational role model of leadership. You cannot describe the way you feel it, but you know how you feel it, right? This person instigates something in you that calls for an action, right? They become, or they push you to do things that you never thought you would be capable. And this is why I don't believe we should ever aspire to manage people. We should always aspire to lead people. And then yes, you can manage all the processes, the KPIs, and so on and so forth. So this inspiration happens for one reason and one reason only, if you ask me. And that's the place of leadership. Because when you think about it, leadership happens in and through human relationships. Look, picture this. Let's say you start a company, a startup, but it's only you in this company, right? So you do the invoices, you do the thing, you do the accounts payable, accounts receivable, you do the whole thing. You manage your own website. Even though you are paying close attention to what you do and your actions, there is no leadership going on. So when we put, let's say you're expanding and then you have people working with you and then you have more clients working with you, in the minute that you have relationships happening with you and these other stakeholders, that's when you see leadership shine. That's when you see the whole complexity of leadership flourishing in those relationships. And that is why it's so tricky and so beautifully complex. Think about the kind of leadership or the kind of leader that you want to be. And this is one of the merits of this program that you're participating is it constantly exposes you to this stimulus of thinking, what kind of leader do I want to be? What pushes my buttons? And you gotta remember that the kind of leader it will be, will just be dictated by what you learn, but look, everything will play a role. Your traumas will play a role on your leadership side. Your insecurities will play a role in your leadership side. Your happy memories, your internal voice, your wishes, they are the ones in charge of you as an individual, and also as the kind of leader that you want to be. You see, I don't know how many of you here have had this conversation about your own traumas, but whenever, I guarantee you, write that down. Every time you see a bad leader, I bet all my coins that underlying the history of this human being, there's an episode or several episodes of being hurt and being very, very traumatic. And as a result of that, they become adults and leaders that are not fully aware of their impact in others. Does that make sense? So this has a lot to do with your journey of becoming. And this is why just training leadership does not suffice. Because it's a journey of becoming. It's an ongoing process. And look, it never stops. So it's not a prescribed sequence of roles and badges and plaques on the door and suit and tie. It's a journey of every day you thinking about what have you learned, what are you becoming, and and spilling yourself onto others. You know, leaders, this is interesting about leaders. They overflow. They fall short. You know, they rely on their vision, their purpose to get back up and keep moving, but they borrow experiences from others. You know, they know that the operating place of leadership is very subtle, very invisible. Oh, Siri, don't worry about it. Siri's trying to participate in our talk. Well, and so this is interesting because what my vision of leadership is when you become a leader, you have to be very skillful in navigating invisible technologies. And by invisible technologies, I mean humans. You have to become someone with a certain expertise of reading people and anticipating behaviors and understanding what is the impact that you have on others. And the more you hone in that skill, the more people notice. And that becomes quite apparent in a very short period of time. So one of the aspects that I want to present in this table, this small room of us here today, is the concept of decolonizing leadership. And what I mean by that is, decolonizing or decolonializing leadership is recognizing the ways in which colonialism and imperialism have shaped our own understanding of leadership. So the traditional models of leadership, often hierarchical, emphasizing top-down decisions, focusing on individual achievement and success, this all stems from very traditional stories and cultures that were imposed on other countries, other nations, other cultures. And we take them for ourselves, and the danger is, and this is why I think this talk is important, is we have to understand that that's not all there is. So this approach often reinforces existing power structures and privileges of those who are already in positions of authority. And my friends, if you ask me, this should be one of our missions, is how can we break this chain? How can we bring something different to the table? So in contrast, decolonial approaches to leadership, they emphasize the collective decision making. They emphasize collaboration. So rather than focusing on the individual achievement, decolonial leadership emphasizes community well-being. You know, the needs of marginalized individuals. And this approach recognizes that true leadership is not about controlling or dominating others, but rather it's about supporting and empowering others to achieve their goals. But not just the others that look like me. That's the key. It's not just the others that went to the same school that I did, that have the same social status that I have. So a key aspect is recognizing the role of culture and history in shaping our understanding of what leadership means. So the traditional models, they have been imposed with very little regard for the cultural or historical context of the communities that they were imposed on. And it's almost, I don't know about you guys, but I come from Brazil, and in Brazil we have something called the mutt complex. I don't know if you know what that is, but we know what a mutt is, right? So it's a stray dog, so a dog without, like the one that I have here in my place that we took from a rescue. There's no breed, it's a mix. So we call that, it's a mutt. In Portuguese, we call vira-lata. And in Brazil, we have this, we call it a mutt complex. It seems like everything that we do in-house, it's not worth it. But when it comes from outside, whoa, that's a big thing. I remember when I moved to Canada, A lot of my friends told me, whoa, look at this guy, now he is important. So this is a symptom of colonial leadership. Now, it manifests in very subtle forms, but this is why it's important to be mindful. So, now, instead of talking just about Jack Welch, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, I do recognize their contributions. But look, we can also talk, or we should talk about Eugenio Garza Sada or Carlos Slim. And that's not enough. We need to bring our successful and hardworking women to the room. We need more Frida Kahlos. We need more Jacinda Ardens. We need to give voice to those who can use for the betterment of our societies. And that's also leadership. We tend to be too focused on business. And I get it. It's where we make a lot of money. You normally is going to be the guy on the cover of Forbes magazine, right? Have you ever noticed a cover of Forbes magazine? Normally it's a white dude, crossing arms, suit and tie, and he's looking at you like he's better than you. Like you look at the picture, and that person looks better than you. Now, I get it. Their contribution, I will acknowledge. But look, we have thousands of community leaders doing stunning things for communities. We have people fighting poverty. We have people giving water to people that don't have water. Now that, my friends, that's also true leadership in essence. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm on the business side. I'm an organizational psychologist. Most of my clients are big corporations. But at the very basic level, we cannot forget that students are leaders. We cannot forget that our staff at universities are leaders. And this is why I think we are now entering, I'm very excited to be alive right now, because I think this generation is the generation that is switching a lot of the things that needed to be switched. And I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. We are seeing this in people more worried about a more sustainable form of capitalism. We're seeing that in people more interested in doing more volunteer work. We're seeing that in students, like first year, second year students, already thinking about how can we make better communities? How can we bring people on board instead of building the wall to keep them apart? So when I say decolonializing leadership, that's what I mean. We gotta look in-house. We gotta see the people that are right next to us doing transformative things, and have to make sure that they also have a voice. And that means looking at the people that are constantly left aside. And here at U of T, we have students from all over the world. And this is the one thing that we always, and I'm a member of the committee, the council, something that we always try to do is how can we make sure that these people coming from places where they didn't have a voice, that they're gonna come here and we will make them to externalize whatever need they have. So we have people now, we have a lot of Ukrainian students coming to U of T as a refugee. We had, during the Afghanistan war, we had a lot of Afghan students come in. And bear in mind, they come to the university and they are very shy and they're very in their cocoons. So our job is to say, look, this is a safe place. How about you now try to do something for the betterment of your community? How would you like to help your people? And I'm very proud to say I had a student 2 years ago. She founded a startup, and she now is running a business. They hire African women, and they take recycled material to build sandals, bags for women. The business is 100% women-based, so all of them are mothers, aunts, and It's the board of directors is all invited by women. And just a quick note here is when I say it's women-based, hired by women, I'm not saying that they're leaving the men out, because that's a misconception. Whenever this conversation starts, people are like, oh, okay, so they're giving that to a woman, so I'm losing my spot. No, look. It's not a matter of you taking a piece of the pie. It's a matter of how can we make this pie bigger? You know, it's not about taking one spot and there's one left. Is by doing this, we create more spots. And then there's more for everybody. Now, one of the things that I find that is a very powerful engine to make this happen is through psychological safety. And this is a concept that I have been working with several companies, especially this year, which has been hectic. Several companies genuinely worried about how can we foster an environment where people are not going to be afraid to speak out their minds. Because if they do that, whenever you have people that are concerned, if they can raise their hands and ask a question, that's how you kill innovation. And this is how you hurt people. You know, this is one of the examples that I gave in my last TED Talk was what happened at Boeing. The 737 MAX was a good example of that. When you look at the whistleblowers, you know what they said? Nobody was going to the executives and say, this is an unsafe way of manufacturing aircraft. And the very few that went, they were completely ostracized and punished. Well, after 2 accidents and more than 300 people dead, then they did something. But you gotta remember, the whole culture, we're talking about thousands of employees. Out of the thousands, we had 2 whistleblowers. 2. So if we don't have psychological safety in companies, there's no way I'm gonna have better leadership. Unless by leadership, we're looking at the traditional approach, you do as you're told, which we know that by now in our economy doesn't fly anymore. And this is what I love about this new generation, because they're the ones saying, no, you know what? I don't accept those terms. And this is freaking out traditional managers because they don't know what to do. They come from a time where they had all the power. And they used to say, if you don't like it, there's the door. But now they know they cannot, this discourse is no longer accepted because they know the cost of doing that. So I am just going to plant the seed here, and I'm going to stop talking for a while because the most important aspect of this whole night here is also to listen to a little bit about what you have to say. So Dr. Musoma, I'm going to stop my introduction here because we talk too much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I was taking notes as you were speaking, and there's something you said earlier on that really captured my attention. Leadership happens in and through human relations. I want you to take us back to little Rafael. When did you start to see the impact of others in your life? Can you take us back to the moment where this is real, leadership is happening to you, and what's going on in your life?
I think, and with your permission, I would like to share personal part of my story, which is why I'm so deeply passionate about both leadership and psychological safety. When I was a kid, I used to get beat up quite a bit, and I couldn't understand, why my own father would do that to me on a regular basis. I just couldn't understand. So, I used to do whatever it takes, don't go home. So my number one strategy is I would get in trouble at school because I would be in school, so I didn't have to go home. Because I knew that going home was a very dangerous place. Now, there was one person in this whole story that kind of rescued me from this whole thing, which was an uncle of mine, and his name was Pedro. And this guy, not only he embraced me, he welcomed me, but also he made me feel safe. So whenever I had issues, troubles, I would go to his place. Now, remember, I was just a little kid. When I got older, I noticed people talking about this uncle of mine, people that work with him. And they used to say, oh my God, Pedro's. I wish we had all Pedros in this company. Because this guy is really, whenever we have an issue, he supports us, he helps us. When he doesn't know what to do, he says, I don't know what to do, let's figure it out together. And I don't realize, man, this guy is not only great to me, this guy impacts so many people's lives. And that had a deep, deep impact on my career. This is one of the main reasons why I decided to study psychology and why I decided to later on to study leadership with using the psychology lenses. So now I'm fortunate enough that I can put them both together and help companies to think about leadership and psychological safety. And the more they go hand in hand, the better the results you get. So it's, I'm very fortunate to have being able to go back to my story and connect these dots, Dr. Musoma.
Thank you for just going and sharing from the heart. I'm sure most of the people that are listening today can identify with Uncle Pedro, could have been an aunt, could have been a teacher, could have been someone. Thank you so much for taking us to that space. This topic of psychological safety that you speak of, and I challenge everybody that's listening today, please Google our speaker and listen to his TED Talk. I want to push it further because you took us back to your home. You know, when we did the introduction, we talked about psychological safety in the home, in the organization. But now you took us home and you spoke of psychological safety at home. I want to share a quote with you that I shared with all the students in our program, and I want you to speak to this TSM quote. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started, and to know the place where we first
I love that quote. If I may, whenever I start and I have a couple of leadership programs that I run here at the UT. In my first session, to all of my leaders, I say, look, unfortunately, I cannot teach you leadership. I wish I could, I've figured out that formula, but I can't. Here's what I can do. I can poke you in the right places. We can uncover some of the things. We can talk about everything that surrounds leadership so you can go back to your own history and figure out what is your own leadership style that is going to speak to your strengths and make an impact on them. And that's my whole philosophy. We're now in the 5th cohort, and that's my philosophy. I cannot teach you leadership because that will be a management training, and that's something I don't want to do. But what I do want to do is I want to poke you, and it's okay if you hate me. I'm a psychologist. I was trained to hate you. Eventually in our training, we understand the patients will hate you, the clients will hate you, but that's our job. And without this anguish, without this poking, there is no growth. You're not going to think about things. So I tell all of my students, if you come out of one of my sessions and you're feeling super good, something is wrong. And you got to let me know. Because you got to get out of here with something churning in your stomach. I'm going to give you some time to digest and come back. But if you're feeling super happy all the time, then I'm not doing my job.
It's actually in scripture, it says, I believe it's Proverbs or somewhere, it says, with more learning comes more sorrow.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's a concept. And then one concept that you brought up that I really love, and I think that covers most of us are either from what they like to call third world countries, developed countries. I hate those terms, I'm gonna use them anyway, but we have the mud complex. You know, I grew up in Zambia, we have the mud complex. You could put two coffee cans, one from Europe, one from Africa, somebody will buy a European coffee can. You know, we do it in institutions, we bring in speakers from Europe rather than sometimes a speaker from local and different things. Could you speak that a little bit more broadly, if you don't mind, before we
Yes.
take students' questions?
Yes, and I think if I may, this is a criticism that I have with most business schools. This was a model that was very much imitated based on whoever got there first. So when you think about the very first management books or leadership books or material that was printed, they all come from powers like Europe, like the U.S. So what happens was this dissemination of this culture was the only thing that was palpable or systemic in a way that I could take that and apply to a class, to a group. So we were taught that this is what it is. Now, there's nothing wrong with that unless you believe this is the only thing there is. Now, what I realize is that it's not that people are doing this in bad faith, but sometimes scavenging great examples from your own context is the best thing that you can do. Let me give you one example of that, Dr. Musoma. So I was in 2018, 2019, I was doing a big project. It was a corporate turnaround in Saudi Arabia. So I was there, flying in and out for quite a bit. And then I was, my first trip there, I was flying and I was thinking, what are these guys going to think if they see me going in front of them? And my contribution there was to change management lead, and most of that would be to talk to the leaders. Like, what are they going to think of me going there and say, look, guys, sit down. I'm gonna teach you how to do this thing. I mean, how pretentious they're going to think that this guy's coming from Canada, thinks he knows Saudi. So the very first thing I did, I got myself a copy of the Quran. I'm going to learn what they think, the very basis of their beliefs. I'm going to learn. So I took, and by the way, I cannot read Arabic, so I bought a version of a translated, annotated version of the Quran. I was like, I want to get there and tell them that I am in your home. So because I'm in your home, it's my job to help you in your way. I cannot come here with my colonial mindset and say, guys, don't worry about this. I know everything. So the first meeting I was there, that's a very interesting story. They got me a translator. I was in front of, it was a steel manufacturing company. And I said, aside from the first meeting with the executives, I said, I want to talk to the guys in the factory floor. By the way, when they say guys, it's because the company was all men because of the culture. So I said, I want to talk to the guys in the factory floor. So we had in an auditorium like 500 of them, all dirty, coming from the break, and they got me a translator. I was in front of them. I was saying, okay, we're going to do change, and you heard about the project, and the guy was translating. And then I said, okay, so let's talk about what does the Prophet talks about change. And then the room went completely silent. So one guy in the middle of those 500 guys, all the uniform, he says something in Arabic. And I look at the translator, and the translator speaks, he said, the Prophet said that, he's not going to change people unless you're ready for change. And I said, exactly. And then I quoted the second part, and he said, and that is not because he's being evil. That's because he wants to make sure that the people are prepared, that no one gets left behind. And then the Arabic translator said this, and I heard a yell in the middle of the, and then I look at the translator, and the translator said, no, this yell is good, keep going. So at the end of the talk, I had like 50, 60 of them coming to me and saying, look, it's the first time we had this, consultants talking to us about our own profit. And they were moved by the fact that, I'm speaking their language in that sense. So to me, this is leadership. It's not about imposing, going there with a power suit and disconnecting, because that's a very powerful protection to yourself. Your ego is completely protected under this image. But to go there and be vulnerable and say, by the way, I don't know everything, I'm willing to learn with you. Not many people will have that openness. So I think this is what I mean by decolonializing. It's taking the local, learning from them, and using that also as an example of leadership. Otherwise, I would be quoting the same old traditional management gurus and all that, which makes very little sense to them, by the way. And that's why.
I love the story. I have a story. I was teaching a class here in Dallas, and it was an introduction to college choice. And I put the definition of DNA on the board, deoxyribonucleic acid, on what DNA was, and I left it for a few seconds and I erased it because I was trying to make a point to the students to say, don't trust your mind, write stuff down. Mm-hmm. So that was the point. So I erased it quickly, and I turned around to the room and I said, okay, who can tell me what DNA is? Rafael Chiuzi. A lady in the front raised her hand. To me, this was a perfect moment of decolonializing. She said to me, if your mom is on crack, you is on crack.
Yes.
My colonialized mindset, I will not accept that. First of all, it's not correct English language.
Yeah.
It is not proper and fitting to the norms of the classroom space. But my decolonialized mindset celebrated our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you just shared with us. When you were in Saudi Arabia, you spoke their language. And in there, they connected. So what a great lesson for us. And I think with that, I'd like to segue to our students and see if there's any questions coming up there. How are we doing? Are you out there for the and MVG? And MVG, what are we looking like with questions? I'm gonna shift screens here. There we go. There we go. I can see everybody. And MVG. How are we doing? Any questions? Can we transition?
Yes, we're having time for the questions. So just start raising your hand, or maybe you can write it down. So yes, you can do it.
Perfect. Before we do that, MVG, I want to acknowledge somebody in the room. My brother, Musoma, is in the room. He's my younger brother, somebody who's known me longer than anybody that's in this room. Then I also have my Mexican family member is there. My mother is Marcela, she's there. Wave your hand, Madre. There's one of my mamas in Mexico, she's joined us today. We've got lots of people from different parts of the world, Canada, we've got some people represented, South Africa with us tonight. So question, students, the most smartest person in the room is not the one that has the answers. The smartest person in the room is the one that asks the question.
So we're having first Ines, then Emilia, then Chris.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ines. First of all, thank you for everything that you have said, Rafael. I've always thought a lot about redefining leadership because I think historically we associated leadership with I don't know, for example, very masculine associated characteristics. And I always thought, why don't we experiment with characteristics associated with women, or I don't know, even recognizing indigenous wisdom. But my question is, what happens because I think it's easier when we find similarities in our definitions of leadership, because that way we connect. But what happens when there are, for example, two definitions of leadership that are incompatible or collide. For example, maybe for many people, Hitler was a great leader because he was, I don't know, able to inspire people to do such horrible things. So what happens?
I very much enjoyed this question, Ines, muchas gracias. And this is something that we were having a discussion in our research group, and I'm gonna replicate that same discussion for you. You gotta remember that a definition of leadership, a definition in science, by essence, it's a simplification of something more complex. And this is why it's so difficult. When we try to define something, we simplify, we condense. And in leadership alone, the last meta study that was done, I think they found over 150 different definitions of leadership. So a definition, in essence, is just a simplification. And this is why it's so hard to pick one, because it all boils down to whatever bias you might have, and then you believe that this is the one. Now, if we think about leadership in a strict sense of, let's say, for example, social psychology, on influence and persuasion, then if I analyze this in a very cold manner, in a sense of this person has a lot of impact on others, then you're right. Then I can put into this pod, I can put Reverend Jim Jones on this pod. You guys know what Jim Jones is. Jim Jones, he was the leader of a cult. He was the responsible for the largest mass suicide in history. And that happened in the Guyana. Starting in the US, and then they flew to. So I would put it in that bucket. I would put Hitler there, I would put Jim Jones there. So if I'm analyzing just the transactional factor of having influence, persuading, then yes. However, when we think about morality in leadership, and then in that has to play an important part when we are discussing leadership for the betterment of humanity, then those don't apply anymore. See? Now we are jumping from the transaction to the intentionality of those people involved in those transactions. And then for that, and I like that expansion because that's when a community leader here will be inserted in that very own definition of leadership. It doesn't have to be left out because he does or she does have impact in that community. You know, a city councilor will be in the same bucket. A nice mayor is going to be in that bucket. But it has to do not only with the power that I can exert from the sense of influence and persuasion and inspiration, but also the intention that I have, the morality of leadership. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
We'll work with Amy and then we're having Chris. Anna.
Hello, I am Emilia, and it's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm really honored to listen to you because I'm right now studying how to develop the organization culture and a little bit of psychology culture. So I'm getting identifying with you about that. We're created to be hated, so that's a good point. And my question is related to what happened when your teamwork or you collaborate with low moral or with low performance, despite your decolonizing leadership. What do you recommend in those cases? It's because if you are working in your leadership and you're trying to be vulnerable and going to learn and do all this, but the teamwork is not reciting that. Like, what can we do as a leader? It happened to me, so I'm like a little bit confused, and I think that a comment or an advice from you is gonna be really, really grateful, and I'm so happy to be here like that.
Emilia, I have an answer. I'm not sure you're gonna like it, but let's do it anyway. there is a French psychiatrist. His name is Christophe Dejoux, and his research work is work, and he says something. Whenever you have an individual in a bad system, and this individual is disengaged or he's getting sick, this individual is the healthy one. If you put good people in a bad system, and these people are not suffering, something is off. So I would be very careful, because sometimes the team not performing might not be a result of the individual level of engagement, but rather the response of a bad system. And look, this is what I tell all of my clients. A bad system will beat a good person every day of the week. So you might have the rising star, the most engaged person. You put this person in a bad system and it's going to grind that person to the ground. So if this person is healthy, what are they going to do? They're going to disengage. It's like, I don't accept this. This is not okay. So I would be very careful. And of course, there are some times where this can be placed on the individual or the team dynamic as a result of personalities and perceptions that are happening over there, or even past history. But my first recommendation to you would be the root cause analysis of this. Is this an individual factor, or we're talking about a system that is broken and these people are merely reacting to a bad system? Because if that's the second, I wouldn't blame them. Does that make sense?
Wouldn't blame them?
Yes, I would not blame them for responding like this. And you know what they're going to look for in a leader? And by the way, this is not me saying, this is a guy named Chris Bargeries, an organizational psychologist that I love. I know this is a very nerd thing to say, but he would say, whenever you have a bad system, you know what the group wants from you? A leader that protects them. But let's say the system is good, everything is going well, then you know what they want from the leader? Someone who's going to say, you know what, go out there and spread your wings. And if you fail, come back to me, I'm going to help you. But that's highly contextual.
Okay, so we have to recognize if it's a bad system or a person factor and an individual factor.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much, and yeah, thank you for that.
No problem. Good luck. Stay strong.
Yeah, I think that we need it. As a psychologist, we need it because it's really difficult sometimes. Thank you so much.
Before we go to the next question, I wanted to ask you, Rafael, can you speak to the parents? What you just shared, because I know there's some parents who listen tonight. I have some of my coworkers on the conversation.
Yes.
How does that apply to raising children?
That
As a
is,
psychologist?
yeah. That is deeply applicable to families as well. So, and then there's an example that I use is, I'm guessing everyone here in this room, let's say you go to a restaurant, right? And you're having a chat with your friends and you're having a nice time, and all of a sudden you bump your head into a glass and it spills all the liquid, right? So how the people around you are going to react? They're going to go, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Or what? Take your chair out and correct? That's normally the reaction. So why is it that sometimes a child does the same thing and you see a completely different reaction? You see parents go like, hey, look what you did. You're so clumsy. Look at that. Oh my God. Or you take the napkin and clean it like this. And so isn't that interesting? Like, can you imagine you having the same response? So now picture this very tiny scene and amplify that to everything. You broke a vase. Oh, you're going to suffer. You're going to pay the price. Oh, I had a low grade at school, So instead of saying, sit down, let's have a conversation about what's happening. No, you say, you show up with another low grade, you're gonna be grounded. So with time, you are mining in a sense of placing mines all around these children, those children, or your child. You know what's gonna happen? With time, give enough time, this child is going to be deeply scared to take any step to the right, to the left, to the front, to the back, because they don't know what's gonna happen. So whenever you have parents that are super strict, and sometimes they don't know any better, deeply punitive, they unintentionally, they raise children that are afraid of taking risks because there's no safety. And if I mess up, it's a flaw of my character. I am not a good person. I am not a good boy. I'm not a good girl. And when you grow up, you know what you're going to do? You're going to find shitty relationships. Can I say shitty?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're going to find shitty relationships. You're going to, when a boss is harassing you, you're not going to say anything. You're just going to swallow, not going to do anything. You're going to be deeply conformed. You know why? Because you're scared. But you take a household that when we're raising kids is, oh, you know what? You lost the game. Let's have a conversation about it. You had a low grade. Okay, let's see what's happening. How can I support you? And I'm not saying you should be permissive of everything, but just teaching the child that this is a safe space. Look, if there's one thing we all know in this room is that we will mess up. We will. Multiple times a day sometimes. So can you imagine how it feels every time you mess up, you have someone rub it in your face? That doesn't help. Now do that to a child for 5, 10 years. You gotta have a really broken adult. And this is what I meant about leadership being also shaped by our own traumas and our history.
This is a very key point, Doc. Thank you. This is insightful. Please put a heart or something on the screen if this is helpful what you're talking about right now. I want to see the responses. Could you speak just specifically to some of the traumas that you might counsel out in terms of adults that are working in corporate sector, or patterns that you see with people that do have such traumas, maybe very clear patterns and maybe how they break out of those patterns?
I have a story that happened with me in the very beginning of my career. And when I look back, I was not ready to deal with that. But I had a client. This client was, he was a family man. He had a wife, 2 kids. He worked for the same company for, 25 years, something like that. One day, he was, out of the blue, he was laid off. So this guy went in a spiral, but you know what he would do? Every day, he would dress up, suit, tie, get the briefcase, go into the car. He would drive his car to a parking lot and stay there for the whole day. And then he would come back at home at 6 because he didn't have the guts to tell his family that he was fired. It was so shameful to him to be fired, to be unemployed, that he was going out of control. Now the problem is he was spending all money because the family didn't know. And at one point I was afraid that he was going to hurt himself badly. So I said, look, this is it. Either you show me that you're going to take care of yourself, or I will have to talk to your family because I don't want to see you going down that road. So eventually he had, summed up the courage and sat down with his wife and talked about it. And to his surprise, and he was telling me that later, he said, I would never expect what happened. My wife, she gave me the biggest hug we have ever had in years. She said, look, that's it. I was afraid that you were having an affair because you were so weird. But look, we're going to get through this. I will help you. We're going to get through this. And then I said, why do you think you didn't have the courage to tell her earlier? And he said, look, I come from a place, my family, where if you have a problem, you take care of your problem. You don't go around asking help for other people. So this guy was willing to go down a very bad road because of what had happened to him as, since he was a child. And the work is central to our lives, right? It shapes our identities in a fashion. So to him, not being employed by that company that he gave his, his blood, sweat, and tears for years, it was so shameful to him that, he was literally contemplating suicide as a way out. It was easier for him to contemplate, take his own life, rather than go to the wife and say, I was fired. This is how powerful this whole thing can be.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is really important for us to hear. In Mexico, we have what is called machismo.
Yes.
Let's just talk straight tonight. To the young men in the audience today, I say, it's okay to ask what happened.
Absolutely.
We don't have to fix that. You've heard our speaker just share a very personal story. Thank you so much, Rafael, for the gift of your story. Because you're telling us it's just with you. It's just with you. Thank you, sir. It's just with you. We don't have, there's no superheroes, that's Disney.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everyday human being. This is not Disney, this is life, guys.
That's it.
Okay? This is life. Maybe one or two questions because, Rafael, we're gonna just hire you in a second. Guys, let's start a campaign. Hashtag hire Rafael. Who agrees? Yeah, let's bring it to Mexico.
I'm much closer to Mexico now.
Yes,
my neighbor said the other day, if you want to see more Canadians, you go to Mexico right now. That's where you're going to find them.
That's too funny. That's too funny. And could you give us some more questions and then we'll. Hashtag hire
We're almost 100 people here in favor, so. Okay, we're having 4 more questions, so I will be straight on having these 4 questions, so we can be respectful with the ones that were raising their hand, and we will be closing the moment, let's say. So we're having Chris, we were having Anna, Hector, and Bob. Okay, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Rafael, for the honor of being able to listen to you and to know and to see all of my friends of EGS here. I was able to see your TED Talk and other videos of YouTube of you, and I have a question. How can I say this? What can we do when in a leadership role we try to do some changes, but that safe space does not exist? And we cannot make that people share with confidence. And let's say that also authorities limit that participation. What can we do as a role in order to make that safe space and to provide that confidence?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is why we need a new batch of leadership. A lot of to foster psychological safety, and this is something that I always tell my clients, is it requires a lot of consistency. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen with training. It's not going to happen because in one meeting you said, by the way, if you want to say something, this is a safe space. It doesn't work like that. Have you ever seen, I don't know how many of you here have had the opportunity to see videos of when people rescue animals like cats and dogs, and when they approach those cats and dogs, they're very, feral, they're very afraid, they're barking, they're scratching, and it takes weeks for them to get to that animal, correct? Sometimes all they do is just sit next to it and wait, and when they do nothing, they just wait. It's the same principle with us. We are exactly the same way. Whenever we are afraid, we show our teeth. And this is why when you see a lot of people buffing their chest and say, you know, I'm the alpha dog here. Every time you see a guy like that, especially a guy, I'm gonna say, just because I can relate better, show me a guy like that, I will show you an insecure man. Because that's what we do. We show our teeth, buff our chest, and that's what we want to display. So in the workplace is the same thing. So if you want to foster psychological safety, it's going to take time. And it's a daily effort. You gotta show your team that you really mean it. I'm gonna give you a personal example. When I hire my research assistants, when I have a bigger project here, my first meeting, I tell them, look, you're listening to me too much. You gotta stop that. What I'm saying is, I have an idea of how it should be done, but you cannot listen to me all the time. That's why I hired you. I hired you because you're smart, and you have to challenge me. Otherwise, I'm stuck with myself, and I don't want to be alone in this. So how can you help me? So I start with that. Do they change their behavior? No, they don't. But then the next day, I start the meeting by saying, okay, let me hear from you. What are the ideas? And then they start talking a bit more. Do they change their behavior? No. But then the third meeting, and then the fourth meeting, and then the fifth meeting. And by the sixth or seventh, I don't have to say it anymore. You just come, and it's nice to see. They come to my office. At first, they're like, can I sit? Can I? Yeah. And then, no, after the 6-7 meetings, just, hey, sit on the couch, open the laptop. And that's like, okay, now that's the space I want to work with. So, Christian, it takes consistency. It's like beating the drum every day and showing them that you're not gonna whack them if they say anything wrong, but it takes time and consistency. And again, not all, like you said, not all places are gonna be a place that they have it. And this is why we need new people fostering that different mindset.
Thank you, Rafael.
Dale, Ana.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I'm very thankful for having the opportunity to listen to and share your thoughts. I think a lot of things you said resonated a lot with me, so thank you for that. And well, my question is more focused on psychological safety, and is what can we do for promoting a safe space and people feel offended or take ideas personally, or when they start feeling uncomfortable with the ideas or topics shared.
When they take ideas personally?
Yeah, like they maybe get offended.
Okay. So I have a few rituals that I use myself with my teams, either when I'm consulting, or when I'm doing research. For example, I normally have a rule. It's called, and this is not my rule, by the way, it's just borrowed. It's called the Chatham House rule. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. So the Chatham House is a think tank in the UK, and they are specialized in having really difficult conversations. So they have a rule: when you enter the Chatham House, you can speak about ideas, but you cannot speak about people. So in our meetings, I try to do the same thing. We're going to discuss ideas, but we cannot attach those ideas to people. And with that, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to foster as much collaboration as I have. So whenever, and I have to correct them many times. So for example, they come back and when we were writing on the board and they said, so Prof. Chiuzi, this is how they call him, Prof. Chiuzi. Prof. Chiuzi, so when you said, I was like, no. And they were like, okay, remember there was an idea about this. So gradually they start detaching ideas from people, and that's exactly to not have owners in the sense of, because if it was a bad idea, I don't want to be attached, but if it's a good idea, I want all the merit. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we don't want to do. And of course, that's one of the things. but it takes a little bit of time to shape the team in that sense, because we normally don't do this. We normally attach people to ideas, and sometimes that can be a bad thing, especially when the ideas are not so great or when we fail. And relieving that burden, I would say, especially in ideation processes when we're brainstorming, it's tremendously helpful in my experience. So another thing I would just add is whenever someone feels attacked, and this comes with my psychology training, I normally intervene much like a psychotherapist would say. I'm saying, look, wait a minute, guys. I believe that what Anna's trying to say is that, it didn't work out, but she's willing to try again and blah, blah, blah. Anna, is that a reasonable thing to say? So I try to rephrase in a nonviolent communication. And by the way, this is a great book if you want to read it, Nonviolent Communication. And then people get disarmed. It's like, okay, now I got it. And then, we establish a new culture within the team, and it works very, very well.
Thank you very much.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Dr.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you both, Dr. Musoma and Rafael, for your time and for your sharing of experiences with us. Thank you very much. Well, my question, I think it's very similar to the last ones. Basically, is what would be the best way, in your opinion, to cooperate or collaborate with people who actively or passively do not want to cooperate? Maybe in a hostile environment.
There is, by the way, I'm going to be academic again, and I'm sorry about that, but there is a book, and to me, this is a must read. This is Douglas McGregor, his 1950 something book. He talks about theory X, theory Y, and that's pretty much, he says, how do you read people's intention? If you're an X, then people are lazy, they don't like work, and you need to crack the whip to make them work. But he said, I'm proposing a new one. I believe, and that's his research, that people are creative, they want to do good work, but you gotta give them space to do so. So, Hector, when something like that happens, people don't want to collaborate, or they're very aggressive in the way they're doing. My number one strategy is I go back to myself and I'm thinking, why is that person being so defensive? Maybe she got hurt in the past. Maybe her older boss treated her like garbage. Maybe she's so afraid of being ridiculed by me or by the team that she's attacking me or the team. Now, whenever someone is being aggressive towards you, if you're super aggressive towards them, that's game over. You lost. Whenever you disarm them with understanding, my friend, you create a bridge that is going to last for decades. And what I'm trying to say is, they're attacking you. You're not taking the bad version. You're not taking that they don't like me, so it's about me, this person is rude, and I'm going to counterattack and play power play and use my badge to exert my power. Instead, I'm saying, this person is doing this for a reason, and it might not have to do with me. It might have to do with whatever happened in her past or in his past. Now would be a great opportunity to maybe try to help and teach this person another way of doing this. Is it going to happen in the first meeting? No. Not in the second, not in the third. So this exercise, this almost like my friend said, almost like a Buddhist leadership exercise, is one that requires a lot of energy from you, but the results are long-term. I would put it like that, if that makes sense to you.
Thank you very much, chicos.
Listo. El go and the para. And we're having one last anonymous question that was sent to me and without it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you again, Rafael, for being here present and sharing all the words you said. Yeah, I think it's more of the questions. My question is very similar to what my teammates have asked before, but in this case, I wanna ask, how can I work, or how can I manage, or I don't know which word to use, how can I work with a team where there is this sense of apathy or disinterest in the work, in the production, in the tasks, without affecting psychological safety, without manipulating, without being rude or aggressive? How can I work with apathy inside the team?
You know, this is an interesting question. You know what's the opposite of apathy? It's energy. So apathy is the absence of energy. And try and remember, what was the last time that you felt deflated, apathetic? Normally, it's a place or a context or a situation where either you were bored or you lost all hope. And you say, it doesn't matter what I do, results are not coming. So, and this is what in psychology we call learned hopelessness. And this is a concept that was researched extensively by Professor Martin Seligman and passed away recently. And he said, some people learn that no matter what they do, nothing good will come out of that. You know how he got to this result? With dogs. So briefly, I'm going to explain. He took dogs in an experiment in a box. 5 dogs and 5 dogs in another box. So in this box on the left, they would both get electrocuted, but it's a very small shock. But on the box to the left, if the dogs touched the panel, they would not get the shock. And the box on the right, doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get the shock. So what he found out is that once the dogs realized through conditioning that they press the panel, they don't get the shock, every time the lights of the shock would come out, they would press the panel like crazy. No shock. And then you know what he did? He switched boxes. And you know what he found out? The dogs that were in the box without the panel, even if they were seeing there's a shiny new thing in front of them, when the light would come out, they would do nothing. They would just sit and wait for the shock. And the dogs in the other box, they would try to press whatever they could see in the box because they knew there was something they could do. So he dubbed this learned helplessness. And he said with humans, so he said, if this happens with dogs, can it happen to humans? So the answer is yes. So some of us have learned through many shocks in different situations that no matter what we do, the outcome is not going to change. So when you become apathetic, it's because you don't feel like the energy is there, or it doesn't matter if you're going to put in the energy. Again, I will circle back to the question where I talked about the system. A system can do that to you. A system can grind you and put you in a scenario where you learn how to be helpless. And no matter what you do, you just cross your arms and just, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. So I would say to you again, the same advice that I gave the colleague is this happening because of the people or because of the system? Because look, if this is happening to an entire team, I would bet my coins that there's something bigger going on, not the people in that team. It's highly unlikely that everybody in a team would have the same behavioral response. I would look at what's causing that. And that sometimes has to do with leadership, sometimes has to do with processes, policies, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much for all the questions and the answers. And I'm having a last question that was sent to me. So I will read it just as I had it. So it says, when we're starting a project, there needs to be focus because otherwise, if many people participate, the project can completely change because everyone has a different idea. The question is, how should we approach this, and when is it okay to participate to manage instead of leading, or leading instead of managing?
If you are in a leadership position,
Yes.
or as a team member,
Yes, maybe you can talk about briefly about the two approaches, just to not mislead the question.
I think there's, we cannot think, if we're talking about, for example, project management, there's no one without the other, and we need both. We need the people that will manage the schedule, and by the way, this is something that I'm deeply grateful in every consulting project that I'm in. I'm normally with a team of 20, 30 consultants. I always heavily rely on my project manager because he or she are the ones that keep me in line because I get very distracted. And they're the ones sending me the emails. Like, you have to do this by Friday, you have to, and I love that because I'm not one of them. So I love because they keep me, so I love a good manager because they help me to deliver. However, if I only have managers, task managers, process managers, and I don't have the one person who I feel inspired by, the one person carrying the flag, then, something is limping, something is off. And I find that the most rewarding projects that I've ever been in, they're a combination of exceptional leadership with great managers. And there's no dispute because they know their roles in that scenario. So I would say a good team will foster both collaboration from the team, but also you gotta bear in mind that sometimes it's the job of a leader to listen, say, I got your ideas, and I decide that we're gonna go this way. And in that sense, sometimes leadership can be very lonely, but it's a price that leaders have to pay. Because if you deflect to the team the whole time, then the team is going to lose faith in you. They're going to become cynical. Because it's one of the jobs of a leader, and again, I'm not saying this is Chris Argyris, it's one of the jobs of a leader also to parent the team in that sense. So sometimes you have to listen, and you say, I listen, but this is why I chose to go this way, and I hope you can support me with that. And when it pays off, it builds credibility. So the next time you have more credibility and more credibility. And then you gain what we call the street cred in leadership. Then your team has your back. That's the best case scenario.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the answer once again. And well, we don't want this to end, obviously. I know they're having some questions, and maybe they are like stopping from the questions because of the time. But we're so glad to have you here, to have the opportunity to enrich our panorama, let's say, as Mexicans, as not Mexicans, as having different points of views from the different perspectives we all have. So we're very grateful with you to open this space for us, with Dr. Musoma to be the connection between everything. So I don't know, maybe they can reach you, maybe LinkedIn at your center. So if they are having like more questions or more questions for you.
Dr. Musoma and myself, we are already connections on LinkedIn as of this afternoon. So
perfect. So guys, you can search Rafael in Instagram and at LinkedIn, a very useful tool. So thank you very much. I don't know, Dr. Musoma, if you have anything else to say. And we'll be continuing with our next part of the session, but I want you to have the last word in this part.
All I'll say is watch. There's some conversations that we have in life that you don't understand. And I can guarantee you, Rafael, this is one of those conversations. You have landed a plane at UTS. I think we've made a shift in the organization as a student-driven organization, student-driven organization. And folks, please apply what you're hearing, not just professionally, but personally. At EGS, we are about developing the whole person. So please take it to heart and use it to shape the world. Rafael, we want to just offer you, I think, you are the presenter of the year. Undoubtedly, you have rocked our hearts, you've rocked our minds, and we're better people because you came today. Thank you so much, sir.
I sincerely appreciate the opportunity. It was great to see you all with your cameras on, by the way. I know it looks very small, but it means a lot to whoever is presenting. I just wanted to say that. And I felt very welcome and respected by all of you. Dr. Musoma, thank you again for the invitation. Fernando, we're exchanging emails. Thank you for that. And it's great to see that we have a new batch of an incredible generation to make this world a bit better. We didn't do a good job. We need to rely on you to do better than us. And I appreciate that. Un saludo de Canadá.
Muchas gracias, Rafael. Thank you everyone. And please stay here. We're having our second and last part of the session. It's going to be a great one. It's a surprise part for you, so please stay in here. And I will be starting to present our second speaker of today. So we're not having just one or two. Thank you, Rafael. See you in Canada. Let's hope. And so we're continuing with our second speaker of today's session. So I would like to introduce Pablo Castro. So Pablo, you're over here and you are, so please, the floor is going to be all yours. And a partir de aquí vamos a cambiar a español. Queremos que Pablo comparta con ustedes unas